So today's show is going to be a little bit of an experiment in me trying to chill out because I'm pretty tightly wound all the time. Stories. So that's my goal. Stories, fun stories. So, as you know, if you saw the show last week, we got a new house. It's on a river. And I took my best friend, plus David, who's in the community here. I don't think he's here right now. Where's the drink? Oh, all right. The drink is here. It's appropriately in a Twitch cup. And it's Irish coffee today. So I'm trying to use up leftover alcohol, like little bottles that have like almost nothing in them. And there's some Kinsale Irish whiskey, which is not the best Irish whiskey in the world, but it's perfectly good in coffee with Baileys and cream. It's a little bit hot right now. Gotta take the insulated lid off and give it a minute so I don't totally burn the hell out of myself. Anyway, back to the story. So we live on this river. You can Google it, look it up. It's called the Puyallup River. Now, Puyallup's an Indian word and like difficult. It's not spelled like you would think. But anyway, there it is in chat. So this is a short river. It comes off Mount Rainier and it's fed by glaciers. And so it flows perversely. When it hasn't been raining and it's been hot and sunny, the river goes up because more of the ice melts. But anyway, my friend David, he's taking an overseas assignment with his company. He's moving to London. He's actually on a plane to London right now. He's going to be gone for 2 years. So we held our housewarming party for our new house Sunday. And we said, look, why don't we have a last fling? You bring your kayak and we'll kayak down this river together. So we got his kayak and we took it upriver. And this river is not rough. It's got virtually no rapids, but it is pretty fast. And I said to him, Dave, really, there's only one thing you got to do, which is there are some trees near the edge. Don't get pushed into them because they'll roll you, they'll scrape you out of your kayak. So it's about an hour trip, and with the current, we go about 6 miles. For the rest of the world, 10 kilometers. It's a 10-kilometer trip, but it only takes about an hour because the current's pretty strong. So, wouldn't you know, basically the first available tree, he goes into it sideways and gets rolled out of his kayak. Loses his glasses, making him blind for the rest of the trip. Luckily, he's a good friend and he's a good sport. And he said, well, the rest of this kayak trip is a trust building exercise because I'm going to have to rely on your voice. I can't see shit. So we got down fine and then we had a nice party. But I thought while I waited for the audience to come in and they're now here, I'd give you a little vignette. And I do have this vision now. I don't have the right equipment, so I don't know how I'm going to pull it off yet. But I'm thinking this is an urban river. It runs through town. And it's only an hour. And it would totally be possible to live stream a trip down it. I just need to figure out how I'm going to mount the camera on the kayak. Because it's totally possible. And I could be reading chat here, and you could be watching the river. Oh, I'm sure it can be done. It's not hard. I don't even need a battery for an hour. Yes, if you can live stream SCA Combat, I can do a kayak. Anyway, now the coffee is cooled off and is much better. I got to go slow, though, or I'll be slurring my words by the end of this. So, all right, I was talking to my mods earlier, and I was teasing them. I said, I definitely need a couple of the mods here today because I've got an inflatable hot tub, and we're going to do a hot tub stream. But turns out that's false advertising. We're not. So What we are going to do is I'm on a new kick. You may notice I've been streaming a little bit less. And that's because I've decided I've done a lot of streams, and I feel like some of them I'm repeating because there's only so much career advice I can give. That, I've done the Magic Loop stream. I've done a lot of the others. They're on YouTube. There's 100 videos there. So what do I have to say that's new? And when I don't have anything to say that's new, I'm not going to say anything. Instead, I'm going to work on building the Mentor Network. So most of you are familiar with the Mentor Network. A lot of you are here today, are in it. If you're not familiar, you can go watch those videos, or chat can fill you in. We're going to have a meeting tomorrow night of the people who volunteered to help us develop it, to try and get the first dev sprint going so that we can build the technology to let it scale out. I heard from somebody today who thought maybe they could get us free access to a piece of software. I could do viewer call in. I do have a lot of, this is an entire page, as it turns out, of guests I have lined up. And I do have some cool guests lined up. I haven't been doing that for a while, but I need to. So I'm a little delinquent on organizing with guests, honestly, which is what I need to do. Guests that can add something to the conversation, because I've added what I have. But if you follow me on LinkedIn, which you should, simply because LinkedIn is where a lot of business happens, but I will link you to a post I made, and it's in chat right now. And hopefully that will take you to the post I made. It's short. You can read it in another window if you're not on mobile. But basically, here's what it says. It says, no company has figured out how to really educate and develop its people. I ask on LinkedIn, where I have a huge network, and one or two people were able to give me examples where some company or another has targeted development. So like Amazon AWS has pretty good training for how to be an AWS expert. Now, do they have good training for how to be a better manager? Do they have good training for how to be a better visual designer? How to gain emotional intelligence, all the other, how to be a better financial analyst, all the other things you need in a career, depending on your job. Not necessarily, but they've got that one thing dialed in. And so, good news. I figured this out. It's not a surprise. But companies have not really figured out how to develop their people systematically. Now, why does this matter? Well, people have always had to learn on the job, but in the old model, kind of pre-internet, you got a college degree, you learned English or accounting or whatever, computer science, although it wasn't a thing, you learned engineering, and pretty much shit didn't change for the rest of your life, so you were fine. Once you knew how to do double entry accounting, that was a skill you could make a living on from age 22 or whatever when you got out of school to 65. The same was true for mechanical drafting or whatever. This is no longer true, right? Technology changes super quickly. All of these skills now get updated rather rapidly. Your average career, if you go to school now, you'll graduate somewhere between 20 and 25, roughly. And you probably have a 40-year career after that. If you think about, most of you listening, many of you are not 40 years old. Good for you. But I am, so I can tell you 40 years ago, there were no cell phones. There was no internet. There was barely they were just starting to figure out connecting machines with dial-up. And 1981, there weren't really much for home computers of any type yet. So I know we were banging rocks together to make sparks to light fire for our dinner, and we were glad to have fire. The point is, so much has changed. 8-track tapes were still a thing. Which you'll have to Google to find out what an 8-track tape was, maybe. Anyway, that's fine. They were a bad transient technology, pre-DVD, which is also gone and dead. So, what's my point? In business now, you have to keep self-educating because the degree you get is going to be worthless later. Not that some of the basic skills won't apply, or if you've learned some math or learned some chemistry, those things aren't going to change. Or if you've learned some English literature, Wordsworth and Keats and so on, Shakespeare are still going to be people. But a lot of the what are called functional skills are going to be outdated. So if you learn a piece of software, useless in 5 years. If you learn a way to build chips, useless. If you learn to work on internal combustion engines, turns out that'll be useless too. And so, 8-track tapes do sound like crap. So the point of this is you're going to have to learn to self-educate. Yet, no company is very good at doing this. Now, there are a few external companies that are starting to do a little bit in this space. So there's Coursera, there's University of Phoenix, there's Udemy, I think it is, and Udacity. Like, people are trying. And God bless them. I want them to succeed. But the bottom line is, your degree or your education is going to become outdated. And no one else right now has a system to teach you new stuff. So good news, bad news, that leaves it to you. Now, I want to give some framing and motivation because some of you are going to be like, shit, I just got out of school. I don't want to do that. Got it. I'm going to appeal to something you probably care about, money. First, though, I want to do a little framing. Think about the amount of time and effort you put in if you went to college or if you're going to college to choosing a college, then choosing what you're going to major in. Like, oh, well, is it going to be English or is it going to be history or is it going to be science or is it going to be engineering, etc. And then choosing classes. Do I want to take Psych 101 or do I want to take philosophy? Or do I want to take another elective in my space and take more accounting or finance or marketing or whatever it is you do, more biology? You actually spend a lot of time planning, picking, choosing. Then you get to the work world and nobody does any of this for you. There are no majors anymore. There's career paths, which is kind of like a major. But in terms of your education, there's no major anymore. There's no curriculum. There's no graduation requirements. There's no one to tell you like, oh, you need this many course hours across this many years in these subjects with this blend of electives. And poof, we'll bestow on you a BA or a BS, or if you're in Europe, a diploma, blah, blah, blah. That doesn't exist in work. There's no one there to tell you. So, what the hell are you going to do about that? And I want to motivate you with a couple stories of what you don't want to be. And then we'll go to the solution. So back in the 80s, when I first went to college, I went to college in the well-known steel-making city, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And but by the 80s, all the steel making had gone offshore. By the way, Andy, thank you for the Prime sub and the 10 months of subscription. I really appreciate that support. And I love Prime subs. So I went to school in this steel city where all the mills were closed. And some of you have heard this story before, but they used to do what are called man-on-the-street interviews, where the local news station would go out and stick a microphone in some guy's face and ask him about some issue. And I noticed that a common thing these folks standing on the street corner would say is, well, when the mills reopen, comma, and then some statement of future hope and glory. I'm going to buy a new house. This problem with crime in our neighborhood will go away. Our children will be better educated. We'll be able to invest in schools, whatever the hell it was. When the mills reopen, comma. But in fact, the mills were never going to fucking reopen. They were gone. They had been torn down. If you know what a Superfund site is, most of them were Superfund sites. Superfund was a government, may still exist. It was an environmental protection agency fund of money to clean up toxically polluted land that was so polluted no private company could ever do it. Yeah, Superfund was super fun. Someone super fun. Super Friends, too. It needed the Super Friends as well, because basically you had mills that had been dumping various toxic chemicals into the soils for decades, and now they were gone, and this land is in the middle of the city, and they're trying to figure out what to do with it. Hey, let's build a park on it. We'll have 3-headed kids. So don't be hopeless like that. And there are a couple of books I talk about. If you're wondering about this, read a book called Who Moved My Cheese? It talks about people who can't adapt. So, okay, let's get to the point. You're going to have to adapt and learn. How the hell do you do it? Well, good news. This morning I created a recipe I want to share with you. The conclusion from all I've said is your future education depends on you. It can't depend on your boss. He may or may not care. It can't depend on your company. They usually don't invest. By the way, why don't companies invest? This is in my LinkedIn post if you went and read it. But why don't they invest? Well, number one, they don't know how. Number two, unless they're gigantic, they can't develop their own courses. And number three, they are terrified that if they educate you, all you're going to do is take that education and either stick them up for a raise or go to another company and get a raise. So from a corporate viewpoint, sadly, it looks like a losing game. It looks like, oh, if we invest in you and educate you, you'll probably either want more money from us or you'll want more money somewhere else. And either way, we either end up paying you more money or we end up losing you to someone else who pays you more money and we have to hire. Now, this is a narrow, myopic view. Someone in chat said myopic. It's completely true. Horribly myopic. Because what really happens is if you feel like a company's investing in you and they are going to pay you more, they should, because you're getting stronger, you're delivering more value, you should be paid more. That's totally fair. But the best way to keep people is to create reasons why you can afford to pay them more because they're delivering more value. Unfortunately, companies can't figure this out. The general way companies handle this is they tell you where you suck, right? They give you a review that tells you all the things you're not doing. And then they give you a bunch of work and a bunch of pressure to fix that. And they basically say, you need to fix these things. But their ideas of how to help you are very weak, usually. So that's my usual experience with companies and their level of investment. Now, why invest? Well, and why start now, by the way? If you are young, I saw a few people weigh in and say they're 40. But whenever you are in your career, why on earth you just got done with your degree? Why would you start this now? Well, first, if you get behind, it's really hard to come back. But second, you want to have a level of investment and a plan across your whole career. It's always easier to stay on top of the cutting edge, and that will lead to you being paid more and promoted faster. This is not hard to figure out. Anytime a new project comes up and someone asks, oh, who knows this language or who wants to learn it? If you can be the volunteer, Magic Loop style, who says, yes, me, I know this stuff, or I want to learn that, or I will go learn it on my own, you will get the opportunity and other people won't. And that will lead, Magic Loop again, go see that video if you don't know it, that will lead to your promotion. So we'll stick the short version of the Magic Loop in chat. You really just do those 5 steps. And in this case, step 2 or step 4 is where learning comes in. In either step 2 or step 4, you're going to learn something new. Okay, so if you know the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, the final habit in the book is called Sharpening the Saw. The idea of this analogy is if your job is to cut wood, you get a saw, you start cutting wood, you cut a log, you cut a log, you cut a log, you cut a log. Eventually, the saw gets dull, and so it's cutting slower. So the best way to cut wood at that point is a little bit slightly illogical on the surface, which is the best way to cut more wood faster is to stop cutting wood and go sharpen the saw. Because when you come back with a sharp saw, you'll make up the lost time and more. Everyone can understand that analogy in sharpening the saw, but strangely, in the workplace, employers don't seem to be able to figure out the equivalent idea that at some point it's better to have the person stop work, learn a skill, an ability, a technology, a tool, and then go back to work faster. This is lost because magically you're supposed to do that all yourselves and people don't know how to educate you. So let's get to the specific recipe. I've talked about why do this. It doesn't need to be complicated. To educate yourself throughout your career, you need to do 3 things. 1, set aside time. It's going to take time. 2, determine what it is you want to learn. Note, this changes over time. You learn some stuff, you move up in your career, you need to learn different stuff. That's okay. Determine what you need to invest. You can think of this as a college analogy of determining what courses you're going to take. Oh, I'm going to take a course in human relations. I'm going to take a course in accounting. I'm going to take a course in marketing. And then the key is to stick to this systematically over time. Here's where it gets interesting. How much time? Well, ask yourself honestly, if you're post-school, how much time are you spending educating yourself right now? And some of you will say, oh, hey, I listen to books on tape in my car, or I go to classes or whatever, and I'm spending an hour a week or an hour a day or whatever it is. Many of you, though, are not doing anything. You're just going to work, which is great. You're learning some things on the job, but you're not purposely learning anything for yourself to keep your skills fresh, or you do it very rarely. Well, guess what? If you do a little more than that, you will stand out from all the other people like you who aren't doing more. And if you put in even an hour a week, it becomes 50 hours a year, and 50 hours is a lot. It's like 5 books or 1, course worth of effort, etc. And we have Liger, who's in Singapore. He says he's 5,000 hours deep into Mandarin. Yeah, so he's a Swede, moved to Singapore, so he's immersed in Mandarin. So I assume it's the language he works in at least part of the day, every day, and we're going to talk about that. The best way to learn a new skill is to make it part of your work. So Liger, that was a good interjection. Because trying to learn Mandarin an hour a week from a book or tapes or an online tool, as opposed to learning a little bit of it and then having to use it every day, he's going to accumulate practice hours way faster than you or I can. So he's jumped us ahead a little bit, and I will come to it. But the best way to learn is going to be to figure out how to manipulate your job so that what you want to learn is part of your job. Why? Because let's say you're really motivated, you're going to put in an extra couple hours a week to learn on the side. Fantastic. That's 50 hours a year, then 1 hour a week, 100 hours a year. That's great. Let's say you can make it part of your day job and you end up doing that skill 10% of your working hours. Well, that's 4 or 5 or 6 hours a week, depending on how hard you work, which then is hundreds of hours a year. And that's if it's only 10% of your job. So, simple math, if you can make it part of your work, you're going to get this learning a lot faster. But your boss, your company is unlikely to figure out what you want to learn for you. You're going to have to find the company, the job within the company, and the project that lets you learn what you want, and that may mean moving jobs. That said, we're a little bit ahead of yourself. And Chalkbog, I'm glad you enjoyed the talks, and I'm glad this one's working for you today. Story luck. All right. Okay. Let's see. So the next thing I want to say is many of you are in college or haven't ever thought about a different learning method after college. College is very structured. University is very structured. In college, it's choose your classes, go to the lectures, do the homework projects or papers, take the exams. And some of you skip many of those steps. You don't go to the classes, you don't go to the lectures. You skip as much of the homework as you can, and you plan on acing the exam because at the beginning of the semester, the professor said if you get an A on the exam, you get an A for the class. And you're like, that's my plan. I know, I was there. Okay. Interestingly, a lot of things have changed in 30 or 40 years, but that hasn't. So you have a lot more options. Now you can still take classes. You can go to college and take them, night school, MBA, executive MBA program, things like that. You can also go to all kinds of vendors. We mentioned Coursera. We mentioned University of Phoenix. You can still learn in typical coursework fashion. You can also read or listen to audiobooks, which is a variation of reading. So there's tons of written material. You can get a mentor. We talked earlier today about the mentorship network we've built and that we're getting ready to scale. So we're halfway, not quite. We're a third of the way through the pilot, and we just are kicking off the dev work to build what we need to scale. By the way, if any of you are devs listening who want to contribute to that and can volunteer and do serious volunteer work, reach out to me on Discord. And Mod, stick the Discord link in chat if you don't mind. Okay. You can use YouTube. You can use other online resources to educate yourself. And of course, as I said, you can do it at work, on the job, based on your job. The point is you have all these different methods through which to learn, and most of those aren't college methods. The set of topics is also a lot wider, and I want you to think about this. In school, it was all domain knowledge. If you're a physics major, you learned math, physics, and then whatever else they made you learn. If you were a finance major, you learned accounting and financial planning and, again, math and so on, stats, and on and on. If you were an art history major, you learn about art and writing. When you're in work, in a job, and in a career, we call those functional skills. But that's only one category of what you can now learn. If you're not in a tech field, you can study technology. And you say, why would I study technology? Well, as a lever, if you're the expert on the tool set, if you're the only one in your team who understands what a database is and how to use it or how to write reports in Tableau, if you're the only one who's a true PowerPoint wizard, these become actual useful career skills that can change how you're perceived. If you're someone who can write an Excel macro, in some groups, that is an arcane skill that gives you godlike credibility. In other groups, it's like, really? Are you kidding me? So, the point of this is technology knowledge can be a skill. You can learn communication skill, interpersonal skills. You can raise your emotional intelligence, your ability to organize teams, motivate teammates, work with others, work with difficult customers. This is highly paid. And that can be super valuable. You can learn project management and process. Yes, you're part of a team where everybody is smart, hopefully, and knows their stuff. But if they can't work together, if they cannot organize their work, that's a whole other skill where you can go get certified or you can get the knowledge to organize work. By the way, I've said before, most of my career and my personal success came from being good at this. It came from being good at organizing to get shit done on a date. That was basically a lot of my career was bringing groups of people together, getting them in UK English, getting them sorted, and pushing to get something done. And that was a skill, and it was a skill that drove a whole career. Now, leadership is also a skill. And there's probably more. The point I'm getting at is when you think about educating yourself, do not narrowly think about only your college major or your job. I'm an artist, I need to be a better artist. Well, you also need to be able to sell that art, or you need to be able to work with people who are the customers of that art, and so on. Now, bottom line is, you have to make your own life plan for how you're going to educate yourself. And the point of my stream today is it pisses me off, and I think it's sad that no one else is going to help you with that, so I'm trying to help you with it. And the basic point is you're going to do better staying current and building valuable skills if you take a few minutes now and in your future to think about, hey, what the hell would I like to learn and how am I going to do it? And what commitment am I going to make to myself than if you don't? It's really simple. If you take 1,000 people today and divide them into the ones that have a plan, how they're going to systematically keep their skills current and build new skills, and who follow all the simple stuff I've talked about here, or even fucking any of it, and a set of people who don't, and are like, I'm getting paid today, and like I'm kind of tired, and I want to go play some games, have a beer, and they don't have any plan and they don't do much, and then you compound that forward 5 or 10 years, I'm very clear on who's going to be doing better. So, and somebody asked me a question I'll come back to, but I'm going to give them a chance to edit it. It's in our question tool, and it says, who can you learn to be a good leader throughout our career? And I didn't misread that. Who can you learn to be a good leader throughout our career? I don't understand that question. So maybe try again. Do you mean how can you learn to be? Do you mean, I don't know. So, okay. Looks like people mean how. So when I come back and answer it, I'll cover how. Okay. So you have to do this yourself, and people with a plan are going to do better than people without a plan. This all should be obvious. If you don't agree with me, that's okay. But, I'm not going to bother to prove it to you because I think it's obvious. So now we're going to go to a gaming analogy. This kind of learning is like an open world game. There's no structure. We just talked about that. You have to make up your own structure, make up your own goals and your own quests. That lack of structure is both good and bad. On the bad side, you do have to figure it all out yourselves. On the good side, you get to pick your own things to focus on. Important, we've talked about this when we've talked about flow state and when we talked about motivation. You can pick things you actually give a shit about. Great. Hopefully you have a career, you have a job. If you want to grow in that career, you actually have the choice because nobody else around you is bothering. They're all just whining about the work and slacking off as much as they can and then going home. All you get to choose what you want to do. And we have lots of people in the channel who have reported back from using the magic loop. Hey, I actually went and asked my boss how I could help, and they were blown away. And then I did some things to help them, and they promoted me. We have this story all the time in our Discord server. Major Gamer Geek, thank you for the ongoing sub. And yeah, I want to tell this story, okay? I'm going to interrupt myself, which I do a lot. Tough, live with it. My daughter, who's 18, and my stepson, who is 19, I talked about this a few months ago. They both got jobs during the winter in the ski industry. My stepson worked at a local ski shop setting up rentals. So rental snowboards, rental skis. He was the rental guy. My daughter worked scanning tickets at a local ski mountain. Both of them discovered as late teenagers incredible work superpowers, which I'm going to reveal to you and are going to blow your mind about how low the bar is. They discovered that if they did two things, their employers adored them. And it makes their moms and I cringe. Thing number one, show up for your shifts. This is apparently, yes, Taryn Fear, you were on it. Show up. He was right as I said it. It popped up in chat. Show up. Thing number one of two, just turn up. Thing number two of two, actually do a little work rather than fucking off the entire time you're there. This got my stepson offered a permanent position through the summer at a ski shop, which has very little business in the summer, but they keep a few people on, and they offered him the job. And it got my daughter, who was working at the ski slope, which closes down because there's no snow, as a new hourly worker, a kid who'd never had a job before, paid 2 different bonuses because she showed up and others didn't. And yeah, the troll here in chat says, no, he's not. He may or may not be really a troll. I'm not calling you a troll, except that's your name. It is that basic at that age. Now, as you move into the professional world, that would not fly at Amazon. If all I had done at Amazon was show up and do a little work, I probably would have remained employed, by the way. I would not have been thought of as great. So the bar does get higher in more demanding, environments. Plus, David, oh, you're here, man. You missed it. I told the story of our kayak adventure. You'll have to rewind the VOD later and listen. And also, if you haven't gotten to it, Renee's asking about some EC2 stuff. Yeah, so those who didn't hear about it, that's good old Dave, man. He's a trooper. We went kayaking in the river out behind my house, and he had to add swimming to the recreation plan for the day. And then blind kayaking to go after it. Have you taken off yet? Do you leave tonight, or do you can't? Are you already in London? There's no way you'd be up. So, Gar 98, of course you've missed a lot. For shame, for shame. All right. So I've covered most of this. I want to get to the conclusion, and then we'll take questions. T-minus 6 hours. Then you have lots of time to get Renee the EC2 access. Thank you. And please hang out during the show. I'm glad you're here. Dave, as I mentioned, is my best friend. He gets on a plane for London in 6 hours. And so I'll only see him occasionally for the next 2 years, but I am super happy for him. Oh, and Dave, Irish coffee, buddy. That's today's drink. When I visit, yes, only better. And many other good drinks in the great United Kingdom. Okay. Let me wrap this up on the main point. You have to figure out 3 things to build your own education plan. And those 3 things, I'll give them to you, and then I'll give a little more detail on them. They're, how are you going to make time, particularly this week? What are you going to start doing this week to make time? What are you going to try and accomplish this year? Have some goals for the year. And what is your long-term goal, 5 years or 10 years? Now, I think it's probably easier to go backwards on this. To start with, what is it I think I want to be when I grow up? What does my next 5 years look like? My next 3 years? My next 10 years? Then figure out, okay, what could I try and do about that this year? And then figure out, how am I going to start making time this week? What commitment am I going to make to myself this week? And if you just do those 3 things, you will be head and shoulders above others. Now, I said my kids learned this superpower of actually show up at work and do a little work. The easiest way to learn a lot is to combine everything I've just said with the magic loop. So, as a piece of review, for the magic loop, it says, 1, do your job well. Go ask your boss, if you have a boss, go ask your owner, whatever it is, how am I doing? Is there anything I could do better? If they give you feedback, go learn how to do that learning and do it well. Once they say, yeah, you're doing great, thanks. Say, cool, is there anything else I could help you with? Then when they tell you something, you go do that. They will be blown away. See, earlier point about the bar for most people is they don't fucking show up. Oh, I had to call off work. I had a hangnail. Oh, yeah, I had a chance to go get fucking drunk, so I did, and I called off work. The amount people call off work is amazing. And the flimsy excuses, if you just don't do that, you're a miracle worker, but I'm taking you a level higher. You could be much stronger by just asking how you can help and then doing it. But then, awesome, just put up the magic loop in chat. You get to step 4, where you've earned their trust, and you say, I would really like to learn Mandarin. Or, we have Dave here. It's perfect. He literally went to his management and said, I've always kind of wanted to live overseas. Would there be any opportunity for that in our company? This is important. He is being sent to London. They're paying to ship his shit. They're paying for temporary housing. They're paying for his housing while he's there, all of it, furnished housing for 2 years. Then they pay to ship it all back. While he's there, they pay for the differential in his tax rate because the UK tax rate is higher. Dave, if I'm telling any major lies here, feel free to correct it. If they're detailed lies, let it slide. No, seriously. They're paying for all of that. Why? He did a good job. Then he asked and said, hey, I'd be interested in overseas assignments. Do you have anything? And they said, really? We'd love to send you to London. And now, as soon as the pandemic was over to the point where they could get his visa and send him, he leaves today. This is the magic loop in progress. He did his job well. He asked for something he wanted, and poof, he's going to London for 2 years. They would like him to stay longer. Maybe he will. Who knows? The point is, that's all the magic loop. And if you want to learn something like Mandarin for the example we had with Liger or others, you just have to ask. And sure, you won't always get a yes. You may have to change jobs. You may have to change bosses. You may have to change companies, roles. We talked about that before. If you have a shitty boss at a shitty company, then you have to do some of this learning yourself and get the hell out. But good companies are desperate. And remember, this is important. Rewind to my kids. Okay. You guys can Google this. It's screamingly funny. And you can send it to the mods. And they will post it for you. She worked at a place called Brandywine in Ohio. This is a ski hill. Those of you who aren't from the U.S., Ohio is basically flat. Its elevation runs between like 100 meters and 500 meters across the entire state, which you can think of as being as big as a country. And if you are from the U.S., then you know Ohio is basically flat, particularly her part. 300 feet tall, this ski hill. This is not a premium employer, okay? This is a shitty employer. Now, they got bought by Vail Resorts. Vail's a big company, but literally this is a ski resort that's only purpose is to be a marketing front for Vail to get people to buy the Epic Pass, which is Vail's pass, and go ski at their real resorts in the Colorado or in the American Rocky Mountains and around the world. She's working at a place that's open. It opened like after Christmas, so like January 5th or 8th or 10th, and it closed in March. It was open like 60 days. And yet, they were impressed with her and they gave her a good reference. She has a new job now. They gave her a good reference, so she's got another good job. This stuff isn't that hard. By the way, and I'm very proud of her, none of this is from her watching my show or listening to me. Oh, I've gone fuzzy. That's a little sad. I'm getting low res bandwidth back to myself. But that's okay. A little macro blocking, a little video compression never hurt anyone if you can hear me. So, same thing with my stepson. He's working at a ski shop, okay? A regional ski shop in a mall storefront, basically, a strip mall storefront. Too much Irish. He's gone fuzzy. It's not quite gone, but it is good. Here, Dave, water. I'll switch to the other Twitch cup. Again, what I'm describing to you is not hard. And even in shitty companies, they value people who do good work. That's my actual point. Even marginal. It doesn't have to be an Amazon. It doesn't have to be Goldman Sachs. Those are great companies. It doesn't have to be one of those for you to get this kind of investment opportunity. So, what else? I've covered just about everything I need to do. Oh, what are you going to do this week? What are the things you're going to do this year? So, here are some examples. Can you pick a good project at work? Is there a book or a set of books you should read? Is there a course you want to take this year? Can you find a mentor? For this week, how are you going to create 1 hour a week to invest? And then maybe someday you'll make that 2 hours, or maybe you'll get that done at work. How are you going to create that time? Okay. And so now we have a couple questions in. We're going to delete the one that was miswritten. And you can vote on those or ask me others. But I've made the point. Recapping the point, companies don't know how to educate you. Your skills that you're learning in college now or that you have learned are going to age out because of the pace of change, and your companies really can't help you. So it's up to you, and you're better off having a plan than not having a plan. And what I want to encourage you is the bar is so low. Just have some damn idea of what you want to go learn, and you'll be able to pull ahead of the competition around you because the bar is incredibly low. And so that is the whole story of self-education. You have to do it or you're going to sink. But if you do it, it doesn't have to be that hard, and you can combine it with the magic loop, and then you'll soar. And so we have examples at the low end, right? My kid working at an hourly ski hill and getting a bonus and a great reference for a next job. And we have examples at the high end. We have Dave, who's here right now and who flies to London, all expenses paid, to live there for 2 years on his company's dime while he does valuable work for them and earns that money. But he's also going to travel Europe, experience another country, blah, blah, blah. It's win-win. And all he did was ask. Okay. Awesome does have a good point here in chat. He says, don't try to do all of this at once. Awesome is a classic overachiever. For those of you who don't know him, Awesome is not just his Twitch handle. It is his actual first name. So his parents might have given him very high expectations. And so he was trying to be all awesome all the time. And that is too much. You don't have to do all of this. Remember, it's a superpower just to fucking show up to work, sadly. So, all right. Go to the UK to travel Europe. Yep. All right. So let's see. How do you stand out when all of your results are seen as the result of your team as a whole? So, usually people who are close to the team can see the difference. They can see that your team, different people are pulling different amounts of load in the team. So I'm not actually familiar with this situation long term. Short term, I see it. So whoever wrote this in chat, give a little more context of what your team or company circumstance is. The answer to this, though, is how do you stand out is without beating your chest about how great you are, you do the magic loop I talked about. You start stepping up and asking for where else can you contribute or what can you do better. You also help your teammates. Remember, unless you have a very interesting team, a lot of them aren't showing up or aren't doing very much because they're not that motivated. So if you show a little motivation, your management should differentiate. If they don't, go find another environment. Go find another team. Go find another manager, because this is not normal. Now, I get, if you're playing as a part of a team, some of your good effort will get credited to others. But there is a sports analogy here. It is the Lakers, to use a U.S. basketball team, who win or lose. But no one has any ambiguity about who the stars on the Lakers are and who the bench warmers are. And the same is true on most teams. It is true the team achieves the goal. But people still, when it comes payday time, some people get $20 million contracts or $100 million contracts and Nike endorsements, and some of them get to come back to the team next year at the minimum salary. That's usually true. All right. I'm going to see what else is here, if anybody added anything. Hyper Hobbit. You don't have to always do more than others. You have to do more than others on average. You have to, and by the way, the real time to show up is when there's a crisis. If the power goes out, there's a customer crisis, there's a holiday crisis, there's a technical issue, there's a need for somebody on the night or weekend. Being that person who steps up when it's needed is more important than stepping up on a daily basis. Both are valuable. And you should do some stepping up when it's not a crisis. But being there when the chips are down will get you noticed and remembered. That's right. Or like when Ethan had trolls and needed a mod to ban them or needs audio help. That's right. When I reach out to Shadow and say, I'm busy fucking up my stream, come rescue me, she shows up. And that's incredibly valuable to me. So I have tried to repay that by helping her, and I notice her expertise. No offense to my other mods. When my stream's broken, I don't reach out to the rest of you because Shadow is the one who has that expertise. So, the answer to this question is take the right steps to show value to your management and your company. And if they don't recognize that over time, leave. Go somewhere where value is appreciated. Generally, when they say the results are the results of a whole team, that's lazy thinking because no one does that to the Lakers. No one does that to a sports team. And it's like, oh yeah, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they won the Super Bowl. Yeah, it was a team effort. There's no stars. Oh wait, except fucking Tom Brady, right? No one is ambiguous that like the Buccaneers didn't do shit for years, if you know American football. And then Tom Brady. And you can apply this to football and everything else, right? No one has ambiguity about the value of Lionel Messi, even though Messi, gotta get my E high enough. No one has doubt about his value, even though he's part of a team, all right? There you go. All right, let's see. Next question. These are good questions, by the way. Yeah, well, I'm headed to Rome on a trip soon, so I'll be back in the land of football and jerseys. It'll be good. I don't have any good gear right now. That's interesting. I'll have to find out if I can get the kids to a big soccer match. I haven't thought about that. There must be a Rome FC or something that's playing. Jocko Willink has a good analogy about this in his book, Extreme Ownership, when he was talking about strong and weak leaders within their boat crews. He does, Bicephalus, and we think the book, Extreme Ownership, is an amazing book. Basically, this story that Bicephalus has brought up is this SEAL team guy figured out or saw that if you took, there was a case where they took the strongest leader and put him in charge of the worst performing team. And he was able to transform that team simply by changing how they thought about themselves and how they were being led. Conversely, they took the leader of that weak team and they gave him the strong team, the strong leader had just left. And that team was able to stay afloat because the team members were good, but they sank in performance. So it showed very quickly the influence of a leader and leadership. And so if you have a bad leader, you should go. And that's fine. Like, it's okay to get the hell out of a bad leadership situation. All right. This question says, I like my job, but hate the city it requires me to live in. The company has denied other more senior devs requests to go remote, and many of them have left. Do I have any options besides look for another job? Sure. One is suck it up. That's not a great option. The second is ask them an open-ended question. As opposed to demand to work remote, ask them, under what conditions would you consider letting me work remote? Under what conditions would it be valuable for the company if I were remote? You ask it. You try to get them to say what they would need and see if those are things you can meet. Because who knows what their reasoning is. Maybe they want you to come in for meetings. Maybe they want you to travel at your own expense. And maybe you should do that if you really want to move. I don't know what their objections are. Basically, you have to find out. In any case where you're up against a hard no, the question to ask is, what would it take? Under what conditions would this answer change? So my old boss at Amazon taught me this, and it's a great question. Under what conditions would this be different? What would need to be true for this to happen? And in this case, you want to move remote from there to go to a different city, you would ask, under what conditions could I live in Des Moines? Again, who knows? And then you can get slightly tougher and you can say, well, we've lost a lot of talent. I really don't like it here in this city. Is there anything we can do? But you get to that question second, and then you just leave that threat hanging. Given that you've lost a lot of talent, they're going to be motivated to try to do something. Maybe they won't, or maybe they feel they can't. But basically, be curious and go into learning mode. Try and learn what the objections are. Also, be patient. What I mean by that is, as they lose more devs, they're going to be more and more open to remote work. I see fewer and fewer companies who think they can force everyone to live near the office anymore. We could do a whole nother show on this. It's going to transform our society because basically you're going to have a two-tier society, one tier of society that can live where it wants and work from where it is, and another that can't. So we have a huge pandemic-driven after effect, a demographic shift that's going to rock the industrialized world and going to transform the non-industrialized or so-called third world, because many tech guys are going to be like, I can go work in Costa Rica, own a villa on a mountaintop or on a beach, work from there, it's the same time zone, and live on a fraction of the money. And so even though I'm 24 or 26 or 32, I'm going to live like a retired millionaire because that's what my salary is worth in Costa Rica, or fill in the blank location. So that's coming. All companies are going to be forced to allow some sort of remote work. It's coming. Your last option to this answer is simply be patient. All right. Irish coffee almost gone. Irish coffee very good. I have a lot of nonprofit experience with running projects and programs and found that I was able to manage all the responsibilities well. Great. How do I translate these skills to my day job as an engineer when I don't see budget or help make the high-level decisions? Have you asked? It's a super surprise. You may not have. Have you asked your boss, can I be involved in these decisions? This is the whole ask how I can help. Magic loop time again in chat. Okay. Number one, does your management know anything about what you've done? The skills you have. Okay, this is worth covering because we're talking about learning. When you go learn a new skill or you've developed new skills, you got to actually tell your management. You don't have to brag about it, but you can just say, hey, by the way, I've been doing a lot of project management or program management with fill in the blank nonprofit, or I've been running their books for them or handling their budget or their strategic decisions. I love my work here as an engineer, but I have other skills. How can I apply them? Key question, is there anything you need I could help with given that I have these other skills? And that's going to get people to use your skills. Now, again, same recipe. If you're doing good work and you're meeting your day job as an engineer and you tell your management you have these skills and you would love to use them to help them, and could you be involved in some of the budgeting, or could you support some of the decisions by doing project management or program management, or could you grow in that direction, or could you help others? Could you apply those skills? And they say nothing, go somewhere else. Go find a boss with more vision. There are actually bosses, lots of them, who either because they have vision or because they're lazy or both. By the way, it's fine that they're lazy. They're like, so let me get this straight. You have skills in work I normally need to do, but because you want to use your skills, you would do the work I normally have to do and you'd be happy about it. Do I have that right? Come on, folks. This is not hard to get a yes. It's not hard. Not hard. Oh, you amuse me. I get to roll my eyes and make funny faces. That's great. If your boss doesn't have that level of vision, get out. But most of them actually do if you just present it to them I was taught this great, I'm going to put it in chat, just the acronym. I was taught WIFM. What's in it for me? Help the boss understand what's in it for him. He's saying, oh, or may not be using your skills. He may not know you have them. He may feel protective around those things. You just have to show him, if I were helping you with this, you'd have to do less. Or if I were helping you with this, you'd have more time for other things. That's how delegation happens. I, as boss, have a vision of taking something off my desk and giving it to you. This is not a hard sell, usually. Has Evan ever read Bullshit Jobs? I'm not sure what that means. Had he ever talked about it? I have had relatively few bullshit jobs, if you mean if I ever had them. Oh, it's a book. All right, no, let me go look. Now I'm curious. It sounds like fun. I have heard of this book now. Tell me more about it if you're in chat. P break with channel points. Okay. Bullshit jobs. I'm sure there are bullshit jobs. That I have no. Look, it sucks, and I know it's true. I don't want it to be. Bullshit jobs, a theory. All right, I see it. There's a German edition, too. Vom wahren Sinn der Arbeit, which is from where something of work. Sinn. S-I-N-N. Who's German here? Translate back. This is not the same as the title in English. Der Arbeit is work, and vom Wahren is from where. From where something the work. What is this word? Somebody use Google. What's that? Back in English. I don't have time. Anyway, I will take a look at this book. I haven't read it. Seen means sense. From where something about sense of work. Because in English it's called Bullshit Jobs, a theory. So anyway, I'll check it out. But it's got to have means about the madness of work. Sun Glitters. Thanks for chiming in, Sun Glitters. Welcome. All right. Of the craziness of work. There we go. All right. That makes sense to me. Of the So sin, I guess in this case means crazy. From where the craziness of work. Okay. What's my expertise? Careers, management, leadership, resume review. I think actually, we haven't used it today, but I think there's like a bio link. There you go. There's me. All right. So bottom line, I think I've answered this question. If the person who asked it isn't happy with it, hey, you got what you paid for. Unless you're a subscriber, and then you got only part of what you paid for. Okay, we have one more question here. It's the one, I hope the guy hung around. It was the one that was like mistyped in the beginning. How can one learn to be a good leader throughout their careers? This is a giant topic. So I guess step 1, follow this channel. Step 2, look at some of the videos on YouTube. Step 3, prepare for a long journey. But learning how to be a good leader is, number 1, start trying to lead. It's practical. By start trying to lead, you're not going to be a good leader if you never step up, get control of a task, a challenge, or a problem, and try to organize other people behind you, around you, with you to solve that. By the way, you do not need to be the manager to be a leader. People confuse the two. Leadership is about setting vision and direction and inspiring people. Management is about punching time cards, writing reviews, determining salary, and lots of other super valuable stuff. But it is not the same as leadership. Leadership, go see Simon Sinek's short TED Talk, Start With Why. Leadership is about setting direction and having a clear idea and clear vision, taking input, talking to others, and getting them enthused to join you in an effort. And you can practice that whether you're in charge or not. Okay. What do you think is an optimal amount of work hours per day? That's a strange question. I think it depends, but generally we work too many hours and we don't work smart enough, and so we're usually dragging through. So I don't know the answer to this, honestly. Someone just asked in chat, what is the optimal amount of work hours per day? Throughout most of my career, I worked between 10 and 12. It was a lot. I got a lot done. Did I work as smart as I could have? Probably not. I learned more, and I continue to learn about how to work smart. And I try to teach you that here. Most of the time you spend working is wasted. Most of the time you spend is churning around and having meetings and not getting much done. And if you look back, how can I say that, by the way? It's now, I can talk about what I mean by I could have worked smarter. It's now June. You've got 5 months of this year in. Go review, if you can remember it at all, what you did in January and ask how much of that is valuable now. And the truth will turn out to be that probably a lot of how you spend January, if you have a calendar system, Google Calendar, Outlook Calendar, etc., go back and look at your calendar for June and see what it says. For January. And you'll probably find a lot of those projects are canceled or work you've done is no longer relevant. It seemed important at the time, but people didn't have good vision of what was truly important. And this is no one's fault exactly. It's very hard to figure out what will matter in the future. A technique I use sometimes is I ask myself, if today were my last day on earth, what are the most important things I could do? Or I use, since that's a little stark, I use extreme ownership and I say, what is the number one most important thing I have to get done today? And then I don't do the other things. How much work is enough? It all depends on when you get those critical things done. If your most important task for the day is going to take all day, you need to work all day. My most important task today was we want to travel to Europe in a few days. And I said this in the Discord server. I'll tell this story real quick. We are taking a special COVID-approved flight on Delta Airlines to Italy. To take this flight, you need to get a PCR COVID test 72 hours in front of the flight. Then when you go to the airport to get on the flight, you have to take a quick, like a rapid test, which is a different type of test, not this PCR variation, that gives results in a few minutes. You take a second test before you actually board. Then once we're on board, we have to wear a surgical mask, not just any mask. You have to wear a surgical mask. And they're going to give us new masks every 4 hours on this long flight, and we have to change our mask. And then when we land, we have to take another rapid test, and then we can enter Italy. By the way, my family and I are all fully vaccinated, but that doesn't matter. What's the moral of this story? Well, one moral is that we're now engaged in COVID theater, where taking lots of precautions makes people feel like they're doing something, but this has no actual impact or effect. It's just theater in this case. Second, the most important thing I had to do today was get the appointment for that COVID test because it was blocking to our trip. So even though I don't like chasing around doctors to get scheduled for an appointment, that was the most important thing to do, and we got it done. So my day in a way is done. So to the point of how much to work, it's when did you get the work done that mattered? And that requires a show we're not going to do today, which is prioritization. Going to your question, awesome, earlier, I'm not going to answer it in detail today, but I've done other shows on prioritization. The key is how I could have worked smarter is I wasn't very good at prioritizing and saying no to things people wanted me to do, but that really didn't matter, and instead doing things that were so valuable that they would shut up when I told them, your work that you're asking me to do is stupid. My boss at Amazon had a famous to him conversation where he was busy. He was in a place where he was rapidly making money for the company at this point in time. He ran part of the Amazon Books program. And he had developed a program called A+ Detail Pages. Doesn't matter. The point is it was making the company a lot of money. And he was doing several things that kept increasing the amount of money the company made. His boss asked him to write some complicated report. He wrote back. This took balls of steel. I loved it. He wrote back and said, I got your request for a report. I'm doing work that makes us a lot of money. I don't think your report does. So I'm going to keep making us money. And if you would like me to stop making us money and write your report instead, let me know. He never heard about the report again. Now, that took balls of steel, I will admit. But what a great answer. I'm busy making us money. Your work is bullshit. If you would like me to stop making us money and do your bullshit, I will. Let me know. And knowing my boss, he wouldn't have done it anyway. But, you know, he's the type of guy who is willing to put his badge down and walk out the front door any given day. And so it makes him frisky that way. By the way, this guy works for Andy Jassy right now. Andy Jassy is the incoming CEO of Amazon. Another really fun story about him. He won't be working for Andy very shortly. There'll be a reorg, which is all known. I'm not sharing anything private. Because Andy's moved up to the CEO chair, but he worked for him while he was head of AWS. And the great story here is, I won't go into the reasons, but let's just say the two of them disagreed on what to do. And Andy was telling my boss, well, you need to do this, you need to do that. My boss eventually decided he didn't agree. So he just stopped doing it. He just stopped listening. And eventually went back to Andy like 6 months later and he said, yeah, I decided your advice wasn't very good. So 6 months ago, I stopped taking it. And Andy said, yeah, I noticed. I figured you knew what you were doing. Imagine that. This guy's now going to run Amazon. My boss was just decided I actually know what my group needs. And while I value your advice and input, he was not being dismissive. I don't think your advice and input on this topic is right. And so I'm simply going to ignore it. I'm not going to fight with you about it because that puts you in the position of win-lose and you have to try and cram it down my throat. I'm just going to ignore it. I'm going to do what I think is right. And if it doesn't work out, I know you'll fire me. And if it does work out, I know you won't fire me. I'm just going to do what I think is right. And so he did. And later when he called it to his boss's attention, he said, yeah, I really haven't been listening to you for 6 months. His boss said, yeah, I noticed. That was the whole conversation. Yeah, I noticed. Now, can you do this in every bullshit job, this book I need to read about? I don't know. But this approach works more than you would think if you're right most of the time. This is important. If you make the company money and you're right most of the time, it will work out. And that's where I feel awesome. I've said before, I wish I had taken more risks in my career. Okay, let me see if there's anything else here. Um, 123 asks, is it okay to ask the boss straight up which work is more important? Sure it is. That's totally fine. Fighting Pickles, thank you for the love of the stream, the 50 bits. Shows how useless the report was. Yes, Sean123, that's true. And look, I'm sure, by the way, the report had some value. It just didn't have as much value as what my boss was doing. And so what probably happened is the guy he told politely or impolitely, go screw yourself, went and found somebody else to write his report. Someone whose work wasn't as impactful. So someone else got dredged into making the report because frankly, that boss was like, well, okay, who can I find who's somewhat useless and have them do this? And by the way, in big companies, there's always someone who doesn't have the vision to make the company a lot of money, but does have the vision to write a report, and so you let them write the report. All right. I tried this advice out earlier this year. Bicepolis says he's still employed. So great story. All right, everybody. So I have some coaching. I have to talk to my mentees from our mentor program here in half an hour. So I'm going to sign off, take a break, and get ready for that conversation so that I can do good mentoring of them. But just a reminder, we probably could still use some motivated developer help, front end or back end. I think we're going to use React, and we're going to have a call tomorrow night at 7 to organize the developers in the first sprint to build the technology to scale the mentorship program we have in place so that everyone here can have a mentor or be a mentor. If you want to volunteer for that, join our Discord, reach out to me. Rene Rios, right there in chat, is the dev. He's acting as our dev manager. So you can reach out to him. He's Rene Rios in my Discord server. You have him right there on Twitch. He's recruiting because we're going to start tomorrow. And we have people testifying about the value of the mentor program. And if you don't know the offer, you're going to be a volunteer, but there is an offer. We're going to structure it so that it's a project you can put on your resume with me as your reference. So there is a payoff besides doing good if you do real work. I'm not going to be your reference if you sign up and don't do anything. So don't do that. There's no such thing as an anti-reference, but I certainly won't help you out. So if you can help us, though, we would love the help. And you'll be doing a good thing where we scale up the mentorship. I also, by the way, there's another inside thing. If you help build the system, you'll have back-end access to be able to look through all the mentors and figure out who you want to work with. And you can reach out to them first because you're inside the database. So there is real, what I said earlier, WIFM, what's in it for me, that you can get out of this. All right. And with that, I'm going to call it a day. Skills, I don't know anything about that and don't answer those questions. Esports is not my world. And so that's a Devin Nash question. Check him out. He's good at that stuff. All right. So everyone, it's been good. This has been a good show. Thank you all for turning out. It's been fun. Go forth and educate yourself. Follow the magic loop. Get rich and then pay it forward. It is okay to do well in your career and then do some good as a result of having done well. Thank you all so much for being here and your time.